I really wanted to ask you about that problem diagnosis phase. What are some of the tips you give people for making sure they push back and get to the root cause of what problems need to be solved, and they involve the right people in that process?
Well, I wrote a book on that, strangely enough, but it's the one with the red cover if anybody's interested. But certainly going hell for leather in the wrong direction is a bit stupid when you think about it. And some companies do that. They will shoot for the hip, they'll go for it, and they'll make decisions and take actions which haven't really been, they're not supporting a cohesive and coherent strategy that's addressing the business problems as they exist. And of course, the phrase they use is, well, what we're doing is not aligned with business. But actually, there's much more than alignment going on here. You've actually got to get that real clarity on what the business or the organization is looking to achieve in terms of supporting, delivering on its executing its organizational strategy and delivering to the constituents, whether that's patients or customers or whoever, who need their services and goods. So I think it's that whole diagnostics process needs to be looked at in terms that other than learning. And I think that's one thing that a lot of learning professionals kind of get wrong, is they will go into this process of saying, we are going to align our learning and training with the company stuff. And then they'll go and talk to one of the managers out there in the organization saying, okay, what's your problem? And then what learning can we give you to help with that problem? So the problem with that approach is that they are presupposing a learning solution to whatever problem this person is going to get put in front of them. So I think it's really important that you differentiate between what I term performance consultancy, or is commonly termed that, and learning consultancy. So performance consultancy is really a diagnostics process. It's much more of a consultancy process where you talk to people and say, okay, there's a current problem. We've recognized there's something going on. If we don't deal with it now, it's going to cost us money, maybe a lot of money over the next 6 or 12 months. So we've got to deal with it. So what is this problem? And how do we get down to the root cause of that problem? And then what will success look like as and when we solve the problem? So we're back to that clarity of outcome again. So that's that process. But notice in what I've just said there's nothing there about providing a learning solution to it. And only when you've gone through that diagnostics process and you've realized actually one of the potential parts of a number of potential solutions is to provide some learning, then you can start getting into learning consultancy to decide how to do that learning.
Yeah.
But almost always there's going to be a whole raft of other things that need to be done in tandem or in parallel, or maybe even before you do some learning.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that you think about performance consultancy and disassociate it from the learning consultancy. So you've got to do them in that order: performance consultancy first, and learning consultancy second.
Yeah, I think it's that idea of not trying to go in and solutionize something, but to go in and diagnose it. And like you said, treat them as two separate exercises. Like, my first part of this is to help you define the problem, but it's not necessarily for me to prescribe a solution. So I do like that mindset, and I think that is something useful people can apply.
I think one of the things too, you talked about, well, how do we get in? Another way to look at the problems is if we assume there's a problem to solve and we are there to solve these problems on behalf of parts of the organization, what we need to do is to be able to go in there and understand the problem well enough to try a range of reasonable solutions rather than unreasonable ones. So how do we get together with somebody in the organization to understand their problem better? And we often find it hard enough to understand our own problems, let alone one brought to us by someone else. So I think the key tool here is empathy. Now, you can never really truly walk in someone else's shoes, but you can try, and it's worth a try. So think of it this way. It's about joining them in their problem space for a while so you can really try it on for size. So have them describe the problem, what they see, how it makes them feel, what they hear, what thoughts go round and round in their head as they think about the problem, where they see the blockers. So be them as much as you can be for a while. In other words, be empathetic with where they're at. Stand in their shoes as far as you're able. And then you've got to say, okay, I've kind of got that. Now come back into your own shoes and reflect on that from your own perspective. Now notice that when you are truly in someone else's problem space, it can really seem intractable. There's all sorts of reasons why this can't work and that can't work and this is impossible and how can we ever solve this? See, a problem by definition has boundaries that restrict it into a certain area, and if you can't see past those boundaries, you can't see the non-problem area, which is the place where all the solutions are. And that's why people get stuck in their problems, is they're in this bounded problem space. So but to understand it, you have to go into that problem space with them for a while. And then you need to jump back out again and look from the outside and say, oh, okay, now I kind of get it.
Yeah.
And then you can use another perspective as well, which is kind of the fly on the wall one, where you're looking at them as a problem holder and then you as a potential, provider of some kind of solution, but you're looking at that from outside like a fly on the wall. So notice there's actually three different perceptual positions here. There's yourself, there's the other, and there's the fly on the wall position. Now, each of those will give you a different insight into the problem. And you need to go and use them all to get clarity and a holistic view of what's going on. So then you can start being, useful in terms of coming up with potential solutions to the problem.
Yeah.